The floor is looking okay. Normally what I do is I change out the Pea Trap. So the Pea Trap is under here, and I can't show it to you because I've already nailed this down, but the reason that I cut this area out is because, well, first of all, once you've taken the shower pan, the old one, out, it's almost impossible to get the pan liner out without cutting the flange that was part of the old Pea Trap, the flange, the drain flange. So you get a Sawzall blade and you cut sideways and you cut that out, and that frees up the whole shower pan to take that out. So then what I do is I go further down inside, and there is a tool. Don't know where it's at right now. Oh, there it is. There's a tool that will actually get you into your pipe. If I could show you better than I could tell you. So imagine you cut off your flange at the top, right? And so now you're looking below your plywood, and so now you're trying to get off the rest of the flange, and or you're just trying to shorten the 2-inch pipe that's leading eventually into the Pea Trap, right? So this little tool goes onto a drill, and it's serrated on the side there, so you just put it in there and you turn on your drill, and after a while you're able to make a nice clean cut on the inside of there and free up all the excess room that you have for this 2-inch pipe going down to the Pea Trap, which is kind of not what I do, because I always change out my Pea Trap. So rather than do that, once I have my shower pan free, the Pea Trap generally runs away from your exterior wall. It all ties into the tub and everything else here. So I know the Pea Trap is going to be in this direction or that direction, so I just cut out a square knowing full well that's happening, and then I get my Sawzall and I cut just beyond the Pea Trap. And so you would have typically the pipe running this direction, the Pea Trap would be here, you do its little thing and then come up this way. So I cut right here, and I attach a little extension pipe if I need it. If I don't need it, I just put a new Pea Trap on, and that's what I do by default. Always, 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 except for this one. And the only reason I say this one is because I've already checked out the Pea Trap. It has no garbage or mortar or anything else clogging it up. So I've left that Pea Trap intact, although I still need a little extension piece on my new drain that's going to eventually go to that Pea Trap. So the Pea Trap is already there with probably about 3 inches of 2-inch pipe coming off of it, and so I'll put this connector on. Actually, this is one with no stop, so I'm going to slide this connector down onto that piece of 2-inch pipe I have down there, and then I have a little extension piece of 2-inch pipe that's going into my new drain. So that will go on top of there, and then that will go onto that pipe that's showing. So I'm going to show that to you here in a minute, and that's how it's done. So getting to the point of this whole thing, and the reason I have this cut out, well, I've already told you why I have it cut out here, so I can access the Pea Trap. So assuming that's already been done, I get another piece of plywood the same size as I cut out another piece of plywood, and I have scab pieces of 2x4 all the way around it, and once that's done, I just nail those scab pieces in of the 2x4 so that I have an edge to nail on the new plywood. And once I nail on the new plywood, which I've already done, it's solid, it's not going anywhere. Then I drill some holes, but I've already made center where, okay, so imagine the Pea Trap's coming out like that. So the center of that 2-inch pipe of the Pea Trap, in correlation to the edge of here, I already know is 6.5 inches, so I mark 6.5 inches and put a line. And then from the edge of here to the center of that, it's 6.25 inches. So I just come out to here, 6.25 inches, and I mark a line. Now I know that the center of my pipe that's part of my Pea Trap is exactly right here. I didn't have to drill that hole, but I just did it for the benefit of showing you that's the center. Then I drill a couple holes right off the side. Of course, I know the bottom of my drain cap is about 6 inches from edge to edge, so at about 5 3/4 or thereabouts is where I mark my circle. So actually my circle is marked at 6 inches, so you see there's a little 1/4 inch spot there. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to get a Sawzall blade, a wood cutting Sawzall blade. Some people call it a reciprocating blade, reciprocating saw, if you will, which is this little thing. They're battery operated as well. This one is electric. And the blade preferably a new blade. This is relatively new. I've only used it a few times. A short one is all you need. And I'm going to cut a full circle out of here, starting putting my blade into that hole and just following a line all the way to that hole, to that hole, to that hole. So once I'm done with that, I will come back. Okay, about 5 minutes later, I have the hole cut. So the reason this is cut at an angle like this, on the bottom part of your drain flange, the bottom part here, is tapered. And because it's tapered, if you notice, you have these little, where these bolts go into, that actually eventually will be part of your pan liner. That's what those are. You don't want that sitting on the floor. So you're trying to get this tapered edge perfect with the tapered edge that you made. There's no easy way other than making those holes. As I told you, you could do it outside first. You don't have to do it set inside the floor the way I did it. I just prefer it this way because I know it's stable. The wood won't go bouncing around everywhere, so that's the way I do it. To get the edge on there, obviously with that blade that I showed you with the reciprocating saw, you just kind of put it at an angle and you work your way around that line that you already marked out. So that line is 6 inches, although the inside part of here is probably 5 3/4 or even better, maybe it's 5 inches or so. I didn't really measure it, but this 6-inch mark is the 6-inch mark from here, from that edge to that edge, so that when you actually set it in there, that the thing is flush. So let's see if I can get a good angle. This is what you're looking for. You're looking for your drain flange to be flush with the floor here, so that when you put your pan liner on top of it, you know, you don't have a little bump up. You don't want that at all. So that's the whole idea. And then of course you do a dry fit also, which I've already done. So the connector that I showed you earlier, that's going to fit right down on the pipe. Oh, by the way, there is a primer when you put PVC glue on, right? So you have a purple primer, and the primer kind of roughens up and makes the glue stick better. I've seen many drains and many applications of PVC that were never primed because it is low flow water. In other words, it's not pressurized water. I guess some people don't feel like they need to prime it. I've always primed PVC, always. Is there a danger if you don't? Probably not, but I've torn apart with my hands, you know, connectors like this that weren't primed. I think after a while the glue breaks down and deteriorates or whatever, so I've been able to pull those apart relatively easily, which is why I always prime it. So this is my little extra piece that will fit down in there. Right, my drain sits right on top of there, just like that, and it's ready to glue in. So this part will go on to there and it will glue in. What I do, the glue dries relatively quickly, and because I use primer, when it does dry, it's very difficult to pull out. Like, you only have a one shot at doing this. And so what I do is when I actually put all the glue on it, which I'll do all in one fell swoop, then I stick it down there and I turn it. And the reason I turn it is it gives the glue, just in case I missed a little spot of glue or whatever, it gives the glue to spread all over around those connectors and pipes and all that stuff. So I give a little turn like that. In addition to having my screws ready, if you notice on these bottom flanges, they have holes that are recessed, meaning that the screw will fit down there flush. So the top of the screw head will fit down there flush. There'll be nothing sticking out of here. So what I do is I have my 4 screws ready as soon as I glue. Then my drill, wherever it's at, I don't know where it's at now. So I have my drill ready and my screws ready, so that as soon as I apply the glue, that I can quickly push that down. That's more important if you have a little gap. In other words, if your flange rises a little bit above your finished floor, and you have a little play with your Pea Trap to where you can actually push it down, then that matters a lot. You want to go ahead and glue it and screw it before the glue dries completely. So I'm always very cognizant of that. The nice thing about, as I said, I probably did this cut in about 5 minutes, and you're starting out with your cut the way I had it, offset from that line, and then, you know, after you're cutting, you put it back, and oh, that won't fit, shave off a little bit more, then you do it again, oh, that won't fit, and you do it again. So it might take you a little while, you know, shaving off these edges to get your nice taper and all that stuff going on. But the great thing about it is just wood. So if you make a mistake and you haven't already nailed it down the way I have, in fact you might want to use 3-inch screws or something like that instead of nails, you can always take it back off, cut another piece, and start over again. So, you know, that's the beauty of working with wood. Working with this stuff, no, if you do this wrong, you're kind of screwed. Because once this is glued down, only way you're ever going to get it out is to pull out this whole thing. In fact, well, you won't really get it out. It would be very, very difficult. If you were using screws even, you're going to get out the wood part, but you're not going to pull out the drain part. So it'll be problematic. You'll have to get that little cutter that I showed you before and start the whole process over again, and then you've just wasted all that. So one of the reasons I don't make a lot of how-to videos is because I'm so used to doing this stuff over the years that it all comes very easy to me, and I know where not to screw up. With a homeowner, they don't really know where not to screw up. They don't know, you know, that it's a big mistake or a small one. So my assumption is never that a homeowner is going to do this stuff. You know, more power to you if you can. Part of the reason that I show it is so that if you're having a renovation done or something, you've hired somebody and you're watching the process on a day-to-day basis, you can see what's going on. So that, you know, if you're at a point in your home when the contractor is there and you're at a point where he's setting the drain and the drain is sitting like this, as I showed you, that's a no-no, and you watch it set on top of the wood like that, that you can actually go in there and say, hold on a minute, that's not the way it's done. And you can actually, you know, correct his mistakes as you go along and decide whether or not you want to keep them working for you or not. That's really the reason I do the videos, is so that you have a knowledge of what's going on. If you learn from it and you want to do it yourself, that's fine. But most of my videos are not how-tos, and that's the reason why I don't do a lot of how-tos. And it's one of the reasons I talk a lot, so that you understand the whole process. So the next process here is I'm going to glue and screw the drain down to the floor, and I will be back. Okay, I have this glued and screwed. And if you look on the inside, you can tell where my connector was at, and you can tell where the glue is pushing up at. So I got a good job done. And you can tell it is flush with the floor, the way it should be. When I unscrewed it, it was a little bit above the floor, but I have a little play in my Pea Trap, so I was able to push it down a little bit. And that's not a big deal. The big deal is, the main part about this is you want your drain to be as level as possible, if at all possible. Sometimes you can't control it because of the way the original plumbing was set. Sometimes you can, depending on how much room you have for that 2-inch pipe coming up from the Pea Trap. You can manipulate that 2-inch pipe if you're installing it from scratch. If you're not installing it from scratch, then it's more difficult. So sometimes it's easier when, if you have a brand new Pea Trap, it's easier to put the new pipe in at a slight angle, right? So you're putting the level on top of it. Put your level on top of it, in this case a torpedo level, right? Sorry about that, compressor went off unexpectedly. So you put your torpedo level on the pipe as you dry fit it into the Pea Trap, and if you notice that it's off level, then you can kind of cantilever it just a little bit. You'll still get a good bite on the bottom of here when you set it in there with your glue and all that stuff. You'll get a good enough bite, but at least you'll have your pipe level, so that when you put your drain cap on, you already know that that's level. There we go. I was about to turn that off. If you can't do that, if your Pea Trap is already installed and you don't want to, you're not going to mess with that and all that stuff, just be aware that eventually your cap needs to be as level as possible. So, you know, you can go ahead and put a level on it and watch your bubble, right? So in this case, my bubble is level. You want to do it in all directions. That's important because when you start putting your tile on, you don't want your tile to be cockeyed. You know, if your tile sets in like that on the drain cap, or off like that, for all intents and purposes, you can have pooling around your drain cap. So make sure that this is level, and of course, once the drain cap goes on there, you want to double check, you know. You just want to make sure that all around, and you can actually turn these drain caps. You don't have to keep putting it at different positions. You can turn the drain cap with the level on it. My level actually has a magnet that's attached to it, so you know you can turn it all around to get your level. Okay, so that's important. Now, the next step. This is when I run into a little difficulty with other tile setters online and otherwise. I don't know when it occurred, probably about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago or so, this whole idea of having a pre-slope put down, right? So this would be the next step if you were to do a pre-slope. In this case, I don't know what I did. There it is. In this case, you would take your drain off, you would take this off, and then this would actually contradict a little bit what I said before. Oh, by the way, just so, because you're probably thinking, well, why do you have to have this flange flush with the floor? If water gets into your pan liner eventually is going to go over this. And so if water gets into your floor, which it's really not supposed to do, you want the excess water to go to these little cutouts here. You have a whole bunch of cutouts. You have about, what do you got? 6 of these little cutouts here, right? So the cutouts allow that drainage of the excess water to go into your drain should your pan liner get water in it, which you really should never have. In addition to the weep holes. So you have 4 weep holes that if you look through there, the weep holes go directly down into this little trough here. So you got a trough cut out of the side of it. So as you screw it in, you have some male threads, but you have these troughs here. So the weep holes will actually let water evacuate back into the drain, as well as these troughs and as well as these little troughs here. So that's the reason you want this part flush, so that when you actually put your pan liner on, which is going to go here, and then you put this on, right, and lock it into place, and then start pouring your thin or your mortar and all that stuff. That, you know, should something occur on the surface of your tile and water gets down into it, into the pan liner, that it naturally wants to go down to the weep holes and the troughs, and the excess goes down into the drain, so that you don't have a saturated shower pan. Which gets me to my whole point of a pre-slope. So the pre-slope idea, I'm not with. Never have been. I've got another video called Pre-Slope Explained, where I explain the process, which I'm not going to go into a lot here because I still talk a lot and I don't want to bore you to death. But basically, this is at the point you're ready for your pre-slope. So in theory, and again, this is where I disagree, in theory, you would have this going on with this little gap going, right? So you have probably about 3/4 of an inch or so that you would have mortar mix. Your mortar mix would start over here somewhere, I don't know, somewhere around here or so, around where this 2x4 is at the bottom. And you would slope that mortar mix down to the edge and let it dry. So you would slop in all this mortar mix all the way around it, dry pack if you will. You dry pack it and you pat it down and put a level on it, and you know, and keep on leveling, make sure that you have a nice little pitch going down to where your weep holes are at and all that stuff, right? So once that's dry, the next day you would put your pan liner on top of the pre-slope, and the pan liner would be attached all the way around, just as I'm going to show you in a little while, so that you have a natural slope already built in, so that if water gets into your pan liner, that because of that natural slope that you have, the water will naturally want to just exit down into the drain. And I disagree with it. It is illogical. It makes no sense. When you pour your final pan, which is mortar mix, sand mortar mix, let me put this back on. Typically, okay, so imagine my pan is down here already. Okay, the pan liner is already here and it's already in place and I'm ready to pour it. Okay, so right now I'm looking at probably an inch and a quarter or so of room here. And back here is going to be about 2 inches, maybe 2 1/4 or so of room here, that all that packed black sand topping mix, which is your mortar mix, is going to go on. So you've got a good thickness right here, and then it slopes down to relatively smaller thickness down here so that you have a slope for your water, your final tiling surface. Your water will slope down into your drain. Okay. If water gets anywhere into your mortar mix, I'm going to put 4 bags of mortar inside here in probably the next 20 or 30 minutes after I get my pan liner. So 4 bags of 60-pound mortar is 140 pounds in this case. Sometimes my showers are much bigger than this and it requires more. So I've got at least 140 pounds of this very, very thick sand mix topping, which is, for all intents and purposes, like concrete. So let's say way over in the corner, something happens, I don't know, you know, customer didn't seal their tile right, or I didn't grout it right, or something like that happens, and water starts penetrating over into that corner. And the illogic of this whole pre-slope idea is that when water gets down, it's just going to make its path straight down to your pan liner, and it's going to go, ooh, we have a slope, so let's go down here, let's go, let's go, let's go, and then drip, 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 drip down into your weep holes. That crap, excuse me, is illogical. That mortar mix is very thick, as I told you. When water gets in there, the water isn't saying, oh, okay. One guy wrote on that video I told you about, one guy wrote on there, duh, gravity. I'm like, duh, gravity? Gravity doesn't matter. Gravity only matters if there was a gap, right? So you have your thick pan over here going up about that high. You have all that pan mix, which is your mortar mix, right? And then you have a gap under there, say it's a 1/4 inch gap below your, or you know, if you could push up all your mortar mix and you have a small gap down to your pan liner, then it could drip, drip, drip down to your pan liner, and then of course it would flow down that way because, hello, you have a pre-slope. We're not doing it that way. There's no way to levitate your shower pan. You don't levitate your shower pan. You can't have 140 pounds of material in here that levitate above the pan liner. It doesn't make any sense. The water gets down inside this area and it's like a sponge or like a paper towel on your countertop. The water's just going to expand out and dry up, and then as more water is added to it, it's going to expand out more and more, and it finds the dry spots to expand out too, and it's going to expand out and expand out. There might be some little drippage down here to the weep holes at that point where, you know, it's just so saturated with water that it's got nowhere else to go except the weep holes, but it's still going to expand out. It's not going to stop expanding out. This whole pan, you see, the whole 140 pounds of mortar mix is going to be saturated with water before those weep holes really do any good. And I tried to explain that on pre-slope explain video that I have, and some people still don't get it. They don't understand the common sense rationale approach that I'm trying to explain to you. Like, I don't have to be a rocket scientist or have a PhD to understand that simplicity. The simplicity is you pour water on your concrete driveway, and does the water go down that 5 inches of your driveway? No, it expands outward and everywhere it can until finally it's saturated, and then it might go down below grade level, but the water doesn't know where to go. It just knows porosity, and the porosity of your pan is huge. I mean, you got a lot of mortar mix for that water to saturate. By the time that happens and your weep holes actually kick in, you still have a wet shower pan. So regardless if you have a slope or no slope, if you have an issue with your tile or your grout or something to where water is actually getting into your pan, which you don't know anyway, the slope is irrelevant. You still have a saturated pan regardless. I can't explain it any better than that, and you know, I don't want to take up too much more of my time trying to explain that simple fact, but that's the way it is. And as I said, if anybody disagrees with me, do a mock-up and show me I'm wrong. I want to be proved wrong, but this is common sense I'm dealing with, and some people don't have it, I suppose. So, since I'm not doing a pre-slope because they're ridiculous, somebody said, oh, you just don't want to spend the extra time and money. No, it doesn't really matter to me. I'll spend the extra time and money. I want it to work. I want the idea of a pre-slope to work. It would be great. It would be wonderful. I would love to have that happen. You know, you're never too late to learn. I would love that to happen. Common sense defies, logic on that. Yeah, once in a while I lose one of my nuts down there. Not literally. Okay. Great thing about having my tool pouch is I have every little type of gadget imaginable. One of the things I love is this expandable magnet, right? So it's like a telescoping magnet, and anytime I lose anything down here that's metal, I can retrieve it that easily. So, no biggie. So, the next step that I'm going to be doing here is actually setting the pan liner on top of all this. No pre-slope. I know I'm pissing off some other tilers there. No pre-slope, no pre-slope. I'm not doing a pre-slope. I know I'm pissing you off, but it's okay. So the pan liner right now currently is outside. This is just shy of this is just shy of 4 foot by 4 foot. And so what I did is I got a 6x5 pre-cut pan liner. And I will have a lot of excess, which, you know, I need the excess. The 6 foot part will go here and wrap over the curve. The 5 foot will go this direction, and so I have a lot of excess on both sides. Excess is good. It is outside because it's very hot outside, and I want that pan liner to be very pliable so that when I try and set it and everything, I can make it do what I want. Wintertime, more difficult. I usually put the pan liner in a heated room to get it heated up so I can manipulate it. And so I'm going to do that next.